Hi, and welcome to InFocus. This is Jabbar Al-Obaidi. With me in this episode, President Fred Clark, President of Bridgewater State University. And we'll be talking about how to prepare the campus for safe return in the fall 2020, and also about issues related to the national conversation regarding racism, all its forms and shapes. President Clark, thank you so much for taking the time. I know it is unprecedented times and you are so busy, and thank you for in advance for your leadership to make probably all efforts that led by you and your colleagues to come to this point where we are ready as a community to come back to campus, even in half capacity. That's fine. So you asked me before recording about my family, but I would like to ask you about your family, and especially about your precious granddaughter.
Well, thank you, Jabbar, and thank you for having me on the show. It's an honor to be here. It's always a pleasure to be with you, my friend. My family's fine, and but I'll tell you, one of the tragedies of the pandemic, amongst many others, is that my parents, the great-grandparents of my granddaughter, have not yet laid eyes on her. And it's a hard thing. She's 4 months old now, and it just isn't safe. So like you and the rest of Bridgewater and the rest of the country and world, we're just so anxious to have some kind of a medical intervention so that people can hug each other again and shake each other's hands. And, amongst everything else that we've been robbed of, that human interaction, I think, is the one that we crave the most. So anyway, but the rest of the family is fine. And my granddaughter, Carolina Saylor, is doing fine. Thanks for asking.
Thank you. So how confident are you feeling about the safe return to campus in terms of two things, the preparations and also measuring the willingness of faculty, librarians, staff, and students?
Well, first, I would like to just thank the campus community and the town of Bridgewater as well. The pivot that we've made in March when we essentially converted 100% online was nothing short of remarkable. All of our faculty and staff either converted their classes to 100% online or telecommuted. And, we became an online university almost overnight, and that's pretty remarkable. And I think that our students didn't miss a beat. We provided supports, we provided a great quality education for them, and we stayed in touch. We remained a community, even if it was virtual. For this fall, it's a bigger challenge. It really is on every front. You should know, and I think it's important for the people of Bridgewater to know, that 90% of our classes will be 100% online. The other 10% will be hybrid. There'll be no fully in-person classes, meaning the entire class from beginning to end is in person, none. That makes us different than many of the other institutions, particularly private. So you won't see traffic. You won't see a lot of Bridgewater people milling about. And I feel good because I trust our faculty, I trust our staff to do what's necessary to deliver a high quality education to students. We will have students in residence though, but not many. We've offered housing to students that had deposited, and because it's online, mostly online, many of those students have already decided not to live on campus. So we may have on any given day a total of somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 people on our campus, and that's down from our normal 13,000. So we're really in the range of 25%. It'll probably be even lower than that. we won't be safe. No one can guarantee safety. No one can guarantee the elimination of the coronavirus, but we'll be as safe as science allows us to be. We'll be as safe as all the best practices we've learned allow us to be. And we are going far beyond many of our peer institutions in trying to keep our community safe. And I'm happy to go into any of those details, Jabbar, as we go along.
Yeah, but just, one of the concern, especially in Bridgewater town, residents are concerned about probably return students and, younger students, they have different activities and different energy. And I know how much of dialogue that actually occurred between you and the authorities or the town, whether it's the manager of Bridgewater or the council.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been in constant touch with Mike Dutton. We've shared our plans with him and through him to the Board of Health. And, I think the business community I know that the business community has suffered from the lack of personnel at Bridgewater State, and that will continue to be the case. But, at the end of the day, I think, what makes us a little bit different, I think, from a place like UMass Amherst, of course, is the scale. They're talking 13,000 to 15,000 students, overwhelming a very, I think, small community of Amherst. And what we're talking about here is maybe 2,000 students, maybe 2,500. I don't think it'll be more than that. And really just a handful of faculty and staff. We're going to be maybe 10% of our total population. The other thing, Jabbar, and this makes us different too, is we do have the capacity to test every person on campus. We're going to mandate testing for our students that are in residence. I have enough tests to be able to test students that are out in the community. I don't think there'll be many, but I think that there will be some students in residence. We will offer them testing, and we can test every other week. Our partner is the Broad Institute, which is a consortium of MIT and Harvard, and the tests will be administered. And actually, these tests, the cotton swabs are only an inch or two long. They're not the long ones that seem to go to the back of your brain. And we'll have results within 24 hours, which makes it very different from what you're seeing and hearing on the news. We have a high level of confidence. If something comes back positive, we do have quarantine and isolation capacity on campus, and we will take care of those students. And of course, if it's faculty and staff, we'll be working with their health providers.
Now, could you go a little bit in details about the plan in terms of faculty, librarians, staff, students, and how, what's the mechanism that can be in place to guarantee, as you said, no guarantee, but at least to mitigate any probably research or something that bring probably the attention of the community in terms of the coronavirus, and because it's invisible, as you know.
Right.
So, I don't know. I mean, the plan is definitely, in my opinion, is very, very clear. It has a purpose, and you said it's always, you are willing as the leader of the university to adapt to any new circumstances.
Right. Well, first, I would invite any of your listeners or watchers to go to our website, on our main website, bridgew.edu. You will see the Safe Return Task Force plan right at the top. Just click it on, and you can review it on your own. You'll see how detailed it is. But the first thing, the most important thing, is to de-densify the campus. And as I've indicated, we've significantly de-densified the campus from about 13,000 people down to about 2,000 to 2,500 at the most. That's the most important thing. Most of our faculty will not be on campus. The vast majority, over 90%, will be teaching from their homes. And staff will be telecommuting. A significant percentage of staff, 75%, will be telecommuting. For those students, faculty, and staff who do come to campus, though, we will have obviously the availability of testing. I think that's critically important. We've developed our own contact tracing program, so we'll be able to notify not only you, but people that you've been in contact with a high percentage of accuracy, so that we can immediately let folks know if they've been exposed. All of that will be done through our health services, our health center, health and wellness center, and we're ramping up right now. In addition to that, of course, we will have a mandate on our campus for mask wearing, indoors and outdoors. And we will push hard to make sure that our students, faculty, staff wear masks if they can't be more than 6 feet apart outdoors, but definitely, even if they are beyond 6 feet indoors, they will be required to wear masks. They will be required to social distance. And we've already purchased all of our supplies and have our training for the highest level of cleaning protocols you could imagine, Jabbar, for every classroom, every surface that gets touched numerous times. We have cleaning protocols. You know, and there's many other items that come underneath that, but those are the best recommendations that keep people safe. And if people wear masks, if people social distance, if you do cleaning, if you encourage good hygiene, the transmission rate is very, very low. And that's going to be our goal. And with 18 to 22-year-old students on campus, it will be a challenge, you know, but we will do our best to enforce a compliance. And by the way, as a condition of living in the residence halls, they will have to agree to everything that I just mentioned.
How does the enrollment look to you? Because so many institutions, they reported that the enrollment is really going on the decrease side, and it's low. The enrollment is low. How does the picture look to Bridgewater State University?
Well, we can't escape the larger trends, that's for sure. I just saw some numbers the other day that all 9 of the state universities are down, including us. And you know, we're not down as significantly as other institutions. Most of the reduction have been for new students that are coming in from high school. Some losses in terms of transfers from other institutions or from community colleges. But as we sit here today, our budget projects a 5% enrollment reduction overall. And right now we're at about 8%, minus 8%. But we still have a lot of work to do and a lot of time to do it for registration of students. But I think we're going to land somewhere between 5% lower than where we were last year, and maybe 6%. I don't think it'll be more than that. And our budget has already anticipated that. Our folks are working hard in a virtual space to encourage students to not only re-register if they're current students, and to lean into their education, not stop out. It makes no sense to stop out. It makes none. Lean in, keep going, work hard. You'll get through it. And the worst thing you can do as a student is to stop out, because life gets in the way and it's very hard to restart. That's a message that we've been sending to students. So I think we'll be okay, Jabbar, overall.
I know you always start your messages, most of the messages, that we have got this. Again, just in comparison with other institutions, I know I read some articles that some universities and colleges actually announce some reduction in tuition. Would that something that you consider or you have already considered?
80% of our total cost at Bridgewater are for personnel, faculty, and staff, and those costs have not changed. What we did do, though, is we have frozen tuition. This is the first time in many years that we froze tuition. That it would have been another 3.5%, 3.5 million. So freezing tuition was really big for us. And for continuing studies, which is evening programs, weekend programs, we've now frozen it for 2 years in a row. In addition to that, I did add funding for local financial aid. In addition to that, we eliminated parking charges for commuter students. And in addition to that, we took our federal CARES Act money, which is really student emergency fund money, and we spent $1 million giving it out to students who really needed it in the spring. But I have $3.4 million more dollars in that fund, along with some private funding to help our students. So Bridgewater State is positioned to offer more financial aid and student emergency funding than at any point in our history this fall. And that's the way, if a student is in financial trouble, that's the way that we can help that student through. And we're encouraging the campus and all of our members to steer students towards those resources. So if they need help, we can help them. But to cut further than that would cut into jobs. And because there's no other way to reduce tuition other than to let people go. And I've tried to rally around all of the people that work at Bridgewater. I mean, their livelihoods matter too. And we've worked hard to protect as many jobs as we can. I haven't laid anybody off. I haven't furloughed anybody, and I don't intend to for this fiscal year.
Which is very really commendable, because this is very important. I mean, people, they always go and lay off people from job, and I know in your mind and your heart always not to think with the students, but students with the family, and family with the community, and community with actually the broader picture on the national scale. So thank you for sharing that with InFocus. Now, in terms of the enrollment, can you please share with us the percentage of people of color, especially Black students, and in the enrollment, also in the continuation in terms of student body?
We've come a long way, Jabbar. When I was a student at Bridgewater State, only 4% of the student body were students of color. And our overall percentage of students of color are now 25%. And our incoming class last year was 29% students of color. The final number for this class is yet to be determined, but I expect to land right around that same number. And that's a good number at this moment in time, because it reflects our region. The region that we serve is about 29 to 30% people of color, and that will grow significantly. So we have to continue to match the region that we serve. It makes perfect sense, and I think we're doing fine when it comes to our overall percentage of students of color. Where we're not doing fine, really, are the number of faculty and staff of color. We have to work harder so that students of color see themselves in the leaders, the teachers, the support folks on campus as well. We're not doing terribly, but there's definitely room for growth, and we have some plans that we have to launch to do better in terms of hiring folks of color.
But not, this is for the probably long shot because of the COVID-19 circumstances, and is understandable. Now, for students of color, again, a lot of reports indicate that they have the intent to join campuses, and I'm sure they have the intent to join Bridgewater State University campus, but they don't either able to pay the down payment, or they didn't apply for financial aid, or even for the federal application, which is required. Do you have any information on that?
Well, first of all, I think all of our students are hardworking, and they come from working families, and the affordability of a place like Bridgewater is our first priority. It has to be. And we are amongst the most affordable in all of New England right now. It's about $10,700 per year to go to a place like Bridgewater State per year. And in most of our commuter students, which isn't the vast majority of our students, get about on average $5,000 to $6,000 in state and federal and local financial aid. So the balance really is around $2,000 to $3,000 per year. If you live on campus, of course, those numbers are much higher because the costs are higher. But we have 1,000 jobs for students on campus, and we've been working hard to raise money to support them. So most students who think that they can't afford public higher ed or a place like Bridgewater actually can. And what we need to do is to talk to them and to their families, and to make sure that they see the pathway to get there. So, Jabbar, I've already reached out to every student of color who's applied at Bridgewater State with a letter that's already been received by these students, indicating all of what I just said, and steering those students to every support that we have at Bridgewater State to answer every question they could possibly have. We have plenty of support for students that are at risk. We have plenty of support for students that are low income. And the students that are lowest income are more likely to go to a place like Bridgewater State, fully subsidized, than more middle class students. But Bridgewater is a place for all students, and we have the supports that they need. The last thing I would tell you is we've invited at-risk students to come to campus virtually this summer. We call it the Summer Bears program. We've grown that program significantly. We give them a running start. It's an immersion program, and we're up to 160 students. We've had a tremendous response, even in the coronavirus. Our Summer Bears are given how to study. They're given a few courses, including communications. And those Summer Bears, those students that are most likely to probably not persist, are actually persisting at the second highest rate of all students, which says to me, and should say to everyone watching, if you provide support, every student can succeed. You just have to do a little bit more to provide the support they need to equalize the educational opportunities that are in front of them. And that's what we do at Bridgewater every day.
So that's right. Would you say faculty, librarians, staff, and all supporting units are doing that what you call it support, and show support, and continue the communication? Because one of the things I noticed really since the March, the way of communication, the clarity of messages are solid. You know, I mean, I know we need to do more of that, but I have to tell you, this is personally, I noticed that, and I'm hearing also from some of you know, my audience, and especially for InFocus, that the communication is a very positive part of the plan. Now, in terms of the families that they, you know, they listen to your message, what worries that they should put aside in terms of sending their kids to the campus?
Well, I think, I don't know if we could say that we'll be safer than if the students were at home. But if you think about how you spend your time at home, you know, you don't spend your time at home. You go out, you get a cup of coffee, you go to the drugstore, you go to the supermarket, or you take a walk in the park. Those kind of interactions, I think, are the kind of interactions that we can do better than at Bridgewater State. If everyone's wearing a mask, everyone's social distancing, and we're testing the population every other week, the level of safety at a place like Bridgewater will be higher than at other places. Again, you can never eliminate the risk, you know, and should people, you know, not have a worry? I think that it would be foolish and wrong for me to say that. I think as long as our students, faculty, and staff adhere to the health guidelines that we've put forward, that the state has put forward, that the Centers for Disease Control and Infection has put forward, people can be safe. The transmission rate is extremely low. Our challenge is going to be to encourage and enforce and create an environment where everyone mutually encourages everyone else to basically adhere to those requirements. Jabbar, I just want to say, you just complimented me on communications, and coming from a doctor of communications, a professor of communications, I want to just say thank you. We're very proud of what we've been able to do thus far. We'll have to keep it going.
So creating a safety environment on campus and you know, in town, and how to address the issue of racism. You know, that's institutional racism, or it's cultural racism. And what are the steps really to show that this is not only rhetoric or words, this is an action, even small actions or small steps probably will result in something we see it as a real impact and real influence.
Well, first of all, I should compliment the people of Bridgewater, and I've gone by the center of town on Saturdays and other days when folks have been out there in mass holding signs, and led by many of our Bridgewater State folks as well. I think of Vernon Domingo, for example, and yourself, Jabbar. But I think the first step is to raise awareness. And if anything has come out of the George Floyd murder, it has been awareness, not from folks of color, because they were already aware, but from white folks. And I think that that's an important first step. And I could say at Bridgewater State, we had a protest at Bridgewater, and I was surprised by that because we've always felt that we were the leaders, frankly, in equity and the leaders in terms of racial and social justice. But when I met with the students that were protesting, I realized that we can do better. We can do better. We can all do better, and we have to do better. So I think, you know, whether it's policing, whether it's racially just policing, which we're working on at Bridgewater, or increasing the numbers of staff and faculty of color, or interrogating your own white privilege. And we're doing that at Bridgewater, and thinking about, there's not many examples of explicit bias, it's implicit bias, and that's harder to get to, and you have to work harder to overcome that. And all of those things are challenges for our university, for our community, and for our country. And we have to take them on if we do believe in equality for all. And we do. And I think there is work to do. We have to be honest in basically saying that there's work to do, and then go do the work. At Bridgewater, I created a racial justice task force, really to put together a set of recommendations, but we're starting by listening. We're starting by interrogating ourselves in terms of what we're doing, what we could do, looking at wise practices across the country and world, and then putting together an action plan to do better. And to be sure at the end of the day that our students of color have the support that they need, as all of our students need equal support as well. We can do better on that front as well.
And I know you are well known when you started your presidency, you started with these forms of listening, you know, meetings with the faculty. I think as listening is interesting enough that 2 days ago I read an article also about, you know, how leaders started to realize that there is, or acknowledge the need for listening to their staff. And so I think listening is important. Are you planning to start like immediately, or already actually you, as you mentioned, the task force has started the work on that, but as the leader of Bridgewater State University, when and how you're gonna do listening in a way be effective and also lead to measurable actions?
So, right, we actually have already started. We did 2 really large conversations with our campus community and our students, faculty, and staff. And between those 2 communications, those 2 conversations, they were Zoom calls just like this. We had over 350 people participate, and we broke up into groups. We took detailed notes. I think we have 80 pages of notes. In addition to that, we've actually already had a conversation with our alumni of color, and I learned a lot from our alumni of color, and recent alums and alums from decades ago. And we've just finished populating our task force, and of course we've talked to every member of the task force. And by the way, in the community, George Gurley, the former chief of police, a member of our foundation at Bridgewater State University, and I think a pillar within the community itself, has agreed to serve on the task force. And I'm proud of the fact that he'll be a member. But we've talked to every member of the task force. We have about 28 folks on the task force that represent all the right constituencies, meaning faculty, staff, students, community members, alumni, etc. We've listened to them, but the role of the task force will be to divide a little bit and then to engage even further over the summer and into the fall. I don't think you can lead if you can't listen, Jabbar. I just think any leader has to be able to listen. If you're the best leaders to me are servant leaders. How do you serve if you don't understand the people that you're serving? So you have to start with listening. And if you think you know it all, you know, I guess you could be a dictator. Dictators don't last very long, in my estimation. You have to listen, and you have to continue to listen all the way through.
Now, what's your message to the part-time faculty, because some of their classes, because due to low enrollment and, those people, those colleagues, they don't have other sources except to find courses here and there. Any message, President Clark?
Honestly, Jabbar, that's the group I worry about the most, because we have privileged our full-time faculty and our full-time staff. And that has exacted a cost from our part-timers. We still do employ most of our part-time folks. I would say to them, don't give up. Don't give up on Bridgewater. We'll try to find ways to keep you engaged. Our continuing studies operation in the College of Continuing Studies at night is always looking for folks to teach, particularly online, and continuing studies is growing. So we have opportunities to hire our part-time folks, but that is the group that I worry about the most. Our students love our full-time faculty, but they also love our part-time faculty as well, and they're a big part of our community. Unlike many other institutions, though, a place like Bridgewater has an overwhelming number of full-time faculty. We're restricted by our contract, and I think it's a good restriction to have no more than 15% of our faculty be part-time. And actually, we've now gone below even that number, and we did before the pandemic. So the population is not as big as it might be at a place like UMass or a private institution. That's a good thing. If you can hire part-timers to be full-time, that's a dimension of social justice, and I think that's a priority and has been a priority at Bridgewater for many years. But I don't want to downplay the fact that we are worried about that population. It's the one that will be the hardest hit in terms of the personnel side.
So one dimension of social justice is the very concept of digital divide. So COVID-19 actually showed us that people of color, really poor families, I would say it in a very plain language, they don't have the technology that's needed to be available so that they can take online courses or even hybrid classes. So what's your vision on that to help students and families to remedy this need?
That's a very important question. In some parts of Massachusetts, and this will surprise folks, there are communities that don't have broadband, that don't have wireless or even cable, and they tend to be out in Western Mass. But here in the Bridgewater area, of course, our communities are hardwired, I guess you could say. So that particular part is not an issue for students. But what we've done at Bridgewater, first of all, we never really closed our doors. Our library was open the entire time, and we kept computer labs open as well. And students used them. Students were in the library pretty much every day. So we did provide a physical space for studying, and we did provide physical access. But if you needed a computer and you were at home, we lent you a laptop for every student, a Chromebook, a laptop, an iPad. And if you didn't have Wi-Fi and you needed a hotspot, we actually provided that for free as well. And we did that for our faculty and staff. Not too many needed it, but there were a few. So we need to continue to do that. But I'm not aware, sitting here today, Jabbar, of any student, not one, that couldn't access our classes because of technology. And the reason that that I know that they could is because if we were aware of them, we provided that technology for them. And we did everything we could to keep them on track. And we'll continue to do that throughout the pandemic.
Excellent message. Now, Mr. President, the most probably impacted area in terms of education is global education, international students. And we see the impact, especially with the new regulations. I know, they rescinded the decision that they would allow the current students that are actually in the country, they might take some of their courses either in the form of hybrid or some of them online. and fully, but newly admitted international students, based on the previous regulation in March this year, actually, they cannot travel, especially with the travel restrictions. So I don't know how you address this issue of global engagement, especially at this time.
Global engagement is extremely important to our overall student body. You can't graduate from a place like Bridgewater State and not understand that you have a responsibility as a global citizen. We all have a responsibility to each other. So what we do in the name of global engagement is extremely important in the education that we provide. It's far more important than when I was a student at Bridgewater State. It's critical. I think it'll be a challenge for us, Jabbar. It'll be a challenge for our Minnick Institute for Global Engagement to find ways virtually to connect our partner institutions around the world. I believe we have over 75 partner institutions, partner countries. And because of the travel restrictions, of course, we're not going to be able to go there, and many of those folks won't be able to come to the United States. We'll have to use every tool in the toolbox to try to stay engaged. And hopefully there will be an intervention and we can restart global engagement study tours in the spring, but it wouldn't be safe to do that now. And we do have international students, though, that are at Bridgewater. They've been at Bridgewater all the way through. We have partner institutions where we're changing countries. I think of Cape Verde, I think of Belize, I think of Cambodia as examples, but we're changing actually countries, how they teach, how they produce clean water, and many other, how they govern. So we need to keep our conversations going. We need to keep our partnerships going. Just one last word on the federal government's effort to restrict international students from being students online. I'm glad that that decision was reversed in court. Bridgewater was a party to a lawsuit filed by the Attorney General of the state of Massachusetts. And at the end of the day, Jabbar, we're, as Americans, we believe in fairness. And that wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to pull the rug out from underneath students that were already engaged in higher ed institutions at the last minute and try to prevent them from being students and securing an education. That's not who we are as Americans. That's not who we've ever been. And I hope that that kind of thinking is not something we see again going forward.
One of the calls come from some of the faculty that probably one of the good way of addressing the study of Black history and also Black Lives Matters and all issues related to racism and racial justice or injustice is to offer a major in African studies. As you know, we have a very successful African program as a minor. Do you think as a president, this is something that needs to be persuaded? Of course, through the proper channels and the academic affairs and all the governance.
Yeah, I think, first of all, the African Studies minor was created during my presidency. I'm in my 6th year, so it is fairly new. I think it was probably overdue for it to be launched as a field of study here at Bridgewater State. And we have a tremendous faculty member that leads that effort, as we do across the university. But, I would say that the decision on majors and minors is really a joint decision between the administration and the faculty. I think as long as we can generate enough interest in the student body to be able to populate the major, I think it would be absolutely the right step to go in. And I think when we created it as a minor, it was with the understanding that if it grew big enough, it would justify itself as a major in a field of study in its own right here at Bridgewater. We do that a lot. We start with a certificate, going to a minor, going to a major. But again, it's not my decision. It's really our decision when it comes to academic programs. And that's something we should talk about together as we go forward. I know it's on our list. We've heard it already from the campus community. So it's something I'm sure the Racial Justice Task Force and the faculty members of the Racial Justice Task Force will be considering very strongly over the next semester. And by the way, we've dedicated the entire year, the entire academic year, to racial justice. So there'll be plenty of opportunity to talk about that and flesh it out as a possible recommendation.
And in the last few minutes, a question about the police defunding. And I know, our police department are trying to do their best. Even honestly, Bridgewater policing, they are trying to serve the community. But have you engaged them in a conversation and probably think deeper in terms of improving the way that they operate?
Yeah, I mean, we have one of the nation's best police departments at Bridgewater State University, and I'm not saying that, without backup. We've done reviews, and we know that we have an excellent police department, highly trained. And I'll give you an example of that, Jabbar. Even before some of the racial justice tensions flared up because of the George Floyd murder, our police department was already engaged with the ACLU to revisit our police policies to make sure that they were racially just. And they've been working on that for 6 months, in fact, even longer. The ACLU in Massachusetts has asked Bridgewater State to be the best practice, a model for police policies across the country. So we were ahead of, I think, really almost everybody else, and definitely ahead of our peers as well. I think our police department already works really well with student groups, particularly students of color. They're not an island, there are bridges all around. So I don't think we have the same kind of issues that other municipalities have, been on the nightly news showing that their flaws. But having said that, our police chief is on the Racial Justice Task Force, and I've asked him to think about better strategies, wiser practices. And one of those wiser practices is to have somebody in the police department that can do mediation. We've never had that at Bridgewater State. And that's something that we've had some conversation about, mediation, so that you don't always have to send a police officer, when it's pretty clear through dispatch that this is not a police issue, a criminal issue. It's an issue where someone that can reduce tension, and that's really what a mediator does, can move in. And so we may add a position, even in the pandemic, because of its priority, specific for that purpose. That same person could also strengthen the bonds between students of color and the police department, and faculty and staff of color and the police department. The last thing I would say is one of our chairs of our Racial Justice Task Force, Carolyn Petrosino, was probably one of the most remarkable faculty members to serve in our criminal justice program. She's a person of color herself. She's in a biracial marriage, and she has a tremendous perspective on policing. And I know that the conversation will be rich, and that our police department will be even better than it already is on the other end of this Racial Justice Task Force work that we're undertaking now.
Yeah, it's important to say the police chief, actually, of Bridgewater, is also teaches at the criminal justice department and also communication.
Right.
So now, Mr. President, can you share with InFocus something really exclusive for our audience?
Well, I don't know if it's exclusive, Jabbar, but I desperately miss our students. I was in my office for 16 straight weeks, and anytime I heard conversation on the front steps of Boyden, it typically was a student that was in a cap and gown taking a picture because we didn't do a commencement, at least not yet. And I would put my regalia on, my medallion representing the institution. I would run downstairs with appropriate social distance or a mask and take pictures. I did that 200 times in the spring. And I tell you, that was my medicine. At least I got to see some of our students, ask how they were, see if I could find a way to help. And I don't know if that's exclusive, Jabbar, but it gave me energy to get through not just one, but multiple crises that we're facing here at Bridgewater and across the world.
Thank you for doing that. I hope you share some of that these moments with us and focus and in form of pictures or video clips. We'll appreciate that. Something in 30 seconds that you want our audience to think about tonight and next week and on whatever time they have among themselves to talk about.
These are the moments that define us as people, as a community, as a country. And let's not forget that we're really called upon to take care of each other. Many of us have been blessed to have a job. Many of us have been blessed to have a paycheck. And let's remember our responsibility to each other and step up and find a way to help, find a way to serve. And you will be proud of yourself on the other end of this pandemic. This will be behind us at some point. You know, don't go through a crisis without extending your hand, virtually or otherwise, to help your neighbor, you know, to help your fellow citizens, to help your fellow citizens of the world. You know, let's be here for each other and come out the other side even better people than we started before the pandemic. We can do that.
President Fred Clark, thank you so much for this very, very informative and really candid conversation. I wish you the best and thank you for leadership to help our students, their families, the community at large. And again, have a good day. I enjoy your granddaughter.
Thanks
so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Bye.